To trim the excess material, use the hot water to heat just the edges that need trimming. Be careful reheating too much of the splint since you risk losing the shape of the splint. Dry the splint, then trim along your marks. Also, you can heat the edges of the top of the splint so you can round the corners and get rid of any sharp ends. At the same time, you can use your fingers to smooth and curl away any sharp edges along the length of the splint. Running the splint under cold water will help speed the cooling and hardening process. At the notch conjunctions, make sure that the two ends of the splint material stick together. Thermoplastic adheres to itself when hot, so reheat and reseal any notch junctions that you feel are loose or unstable. A heat gun is often used to soften the splint at precise points. You can also use a heat gun to soften small, tight areas such as corners. The heat gun is useful anytime you have an area that is too oddly shaped or too small to heat easily in hot water. When using a heat gun, it is important to keep the splint material moving over the heat so that one area doesn't get too hot while leaving the surrounding areas cool. Also, you can turn the splint over and heat it from the inside. If the area that you are trying to heat is very small, use the tongs to hold the splint to avoid burning your fingers. The next step is to attach the straps. Attach the strapping material proximally and distally to the carpus. Another strap can be used over the foot area if required. Determine the length of the space that you want to cover with the strapping material. Then trim it and round the edges so there are no sharp corners. In order to increase the adhesive quality of the strapping material, use the heat gun to heat both the adhesive side of the strap and the area on the splint where it is going to be applied. Be careful not to overheat the strapping material or the splint since both can melt with excessive heat. When both the strap and the splint are hot, apply the strap to the splint. Cut the strap to fit. The strap should cover the circumference of the limb with a little extra to ensure that the strap overlaps. Check the fit on the animal's limb. Wrap the straps around the animal's limb, trim as needed, and round the corners. If needed, padding can be added at this point. Padding is suggested for the following: the paw, areas of decreased skin integrity, and areas where there is the potential for rubbing, chafing, or other discomfort. Thin conforming padding that has an adhesive back is recommended. Cut small pieces of padding and adhere them inside the splint at places that may potentially rub or apply pressure. Note that if the splint is well made and custom fit to the animal, padding is not needed and generally not recommended. However, if you plan to use padding inside the splint, always plan for extra room when tracing the pattern. Finally, place the splint on the animal and check for any final adjustments.